how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Freddy or Not, where my name is Freddy and I'm ready to dive into today's topic, which is the Tmnt. There are several things about the Tmnt that are pretty well known, like their catchphrase Cowabunga. But did you know that that's not the only expression they are commonly saying? Another one is a lot more well known in the comics. Life is at best bittersweet. And that statement is never more true than when we look at the futures of our very own Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So be sure to like and subscribe because today we're going over every single future we've ever seen. Starting off with the original Turtles, the Mirage comics slowly drip-fed us a mysterious future over several comics. In the story Rocks, a god tells the Turtles that for every lie man tells, the rocks of the planet crack. And very soon, their world will crumble from the weight of their lies. At the end of this comic, Raphael tells Mikey that they'll always be there for each other. But as soon as he says this, a crack forms on a nearby rock. This foreshadows the future in two ways. First off, it lets us know right off the bat that the Turtles will not be staying together. And secondly, the world will crumble. Moving on to the 30th anniversary issue, we get a story of Casey's daughter Shadow returning from college and showing off her ninja training. This comic is pretty cute, but becomes devastating with the context from Dark Shadows. This is a devastating story set years after the collapse of society. You see, most of humanity evacuated the Earth after environmental problems became too severe, with the tectonic plates also fluctuating and causing the axis of the planet's rotation to shift. You know, because of all the lies. Anyways, we find out Shadow stayed on Earth along with her parents and the Turtles. But after setting the stage, this comic cuts to an adult version of Shadow, scarred and bitter, and she's hunting down her old sensei, Raphael. After getting his location from his old friend Cha Ocho, who's now leading the Foot. Side note for those unacquainted, Cha Ocho is a Foot Clan ninja and a friend of Raphael. Here he's leading the Foot Clan, although the Foot Clan did split apart apparently. Anyways, Shadow finds Raphael living as a hermit in a swamp, and from the dialogue it seems that April is out of the picture, and it's heavily implied that Casey is dead. And she says she came because she misses Raph because he is all she has left. But Raphael says that he doesn't trust her because of what she did to Donatello. Shadow claims that that was an accident, but Raph claims that she betrayed them and tells her to leave. After all, the last time they fought, he left that scar on her face. Shadow tries begging for forgiveness, but things continue to escalate until a fight breaks out. At the start, they are both holding back, but there is no love here from either side, just nostalgia. And eventually, instinct kicks in, and Shadow cuts out Raphael's eye. With Raph defeated, she actually thinks about killing him, before acknowledging that she can't kill her past, and he can't kill her, and she leaves. Finally, the epilogue shows a young Raphael talking to the time traveler Renette, who says this is the likeliest outcome of what will happen if they decide to train Shadow in ninjutsu. But if they don't, the odds are she'll be killed by a foot mystic at age 23. So knowing the tragic future that lies in store, Raph begins to train Shadow, because as bad as things are, at least she's still alive. Also, of all the directions to take Raph's future, Feral One-Eyed Hobo was definitely a choice. But as for how he ended up here, that's a bit more complicated. You see, in Volume 2, they have dreams of the future. Splinter has a dream of being beaten to death by one of the Turtles. Donnie has a dream of going to a futuristic Japan, with Splinter saying Donnie is there to bury Splinter. Meanwhile, Raphael has a dream of killing a rat in a sewer before being attacked by a larger rat. The implication here is that Raphael will beat Splinter to death. This idea would again come around in Volume 4, in which Raphael has a vision of him attacking Shredder, only for it to be revealed that he was attacking Splinter. Now, most people thought this would never happen since Splinter died of a heart attack, but it was eventually revealed that Splinter was still alive, and the one who died was a clone. So it's still possible this is how the real Splinter will die. The only other information we have from this comes from the director's cut of The Last Ronin. Keep in mind, The Last Ronin was an idea planned out way early on that never came to fruition. Here it states Raphael assaults Splinter, leading Splinter to die, Donnie to bury him in Japan, and Raph to go into self-exile. Although there's a note here that perhaps Raph and Leo have a fight and Raph leaves as usual, with the Tmnt being attacked afterwards and Splinter being hurt bad because Raphael wasn't there to help, leading Raphael to be overcome with remorse and self-disgust and flees, never to be seen from again. So this could be how Raph ends up in the swamp, because he exiles himself there. Also, let me know what you guys think. Do you think Splinter died because Raph attacked him, or because Raph wasn't there to help? Regardless, we see future Raph only 2 more times. In an epilogue where we see Raph on a building in the streets of flooded New York, talking about how the April robot Donnie gave him is malfunctioning. And then he picks up his childhood teddy bear and says, "Good night, Mikey, wherever you are," and looks at the stars. This is interesting for several reasons. First off, Donnie and Raph were recently in contact. Secondly, why would they want an April robot? What happened to April? And finally, where is Mikey? At the time that this came out, TMNT Volume 4 was still being published, which had Mikey in space, which the writer for this issue states is why he looks up at the stars, as he wasn't sure if Mikey was gonna stay there. But with the context of this issue taking place in the future, Mikey literally disappeared. It is maybe in space? Next, in a story set in 2060, we find Raphael in Japan, trying to rescue a baby from the Foot Clan, only for it to be revealed that this baby was Karai's great-granddaughter, Motoko, and this was all just a big elaborate game Karai set up because she misses the good old days. This is interesting because Karai never fought the Turtles in this continuity, but perhaps she misses the glory days in general and not specifically fighting against the Turtles. But that's all the information we really have about Raph. Switching on over to Leo, his future is mainly told in the story Swan Song, where we find out that he fell in love with the superhero Radical until her old enemy Complete Carnage reappears and kills her. The 4 brothers, including One-Eyed Raph, get together and bury Radical. So it seems that even after the events of Dark Shadows, his brothers were able to get in contact with him. Anyways, Leo wants revenge, but after failing to locate Carnage, he considers suicide. But his travels take him to a monastery, where he spends years finding inner peace and shedding all worldly concerns until he achieved the rank of simple monk, one of the few to reach Bodhisattva. After which he returns to San Francisco, ultimately encountering Complete Carnage once again, and he is currently holding several women hostage. Leo states he did not come for revenge, as he came to forgive Carnage, as well as to free his hostages. And a fight between the two breaks out. He tries telling Carnage to cease his evil and learn the true value of life, but Carnage just starts bragging about killing Radical, while murdering one of his hostages, leading Leo to say that he kills like it's nothing, just like he did to Radical. He's not worthy of forgiveness, and then Leo kills Carnage. Carnage, however, would become Leonardo's final kill, and years would pass until the year 2099, in which we find a Leo who has now learned the nuances of atonement and detachment, even being able to levitate now when he meditates. Also of note is that Leo has a weird blue sword by this point, which we learned from another story is a cybernetic katana Donatello gave him for his 100th birthday. This sword channels electricity through the blade by force of will, and this is a good gift since Leonardo has sworn off killing, so the blade doesn't kill. Anyways, this elderly Leonardo then climbs into the treehouse where he lives and prepares for the next life, with the implication being that this was the end of his life. Finally, we arrive at Donnie's future, told in 2 stories. The first has him training using holographic simulations of the Foot and Shredder from 1985, but when his computer, named Chet, loaded in a simulation of the Turtles circa 1985, he tells the program to freeze and edit out all life forms except for the Foot and Shredder. And then Donnie takes off his mask, crying, and tells Chet, "Don't ever do that again. Ever." Finally, we get the frontispieces and epilogue, in which an elderly Donatello introduces the stories. I only have access to the epilogue, but I have recaps of the other pages. In one of them, Leonardo and Donatello go to visit the grave of Casey Jones. In one of the others, the future Don, Leo, and Mikey are hanging out. Mikey apparently speaks with excellent vocabulary and alliteration to the point that Donnie compliments his way with words. It's been speculated that perhaps this is due to Mikey pursuing his dream of becoming a writer. Anyways, the 3-page epilogue shows the 4 brothers together, although Raphael looks significantly younger than the others. When Donnie says computer and holographic simulation reunion. And then he crawls into bed with a walking stick and he tells his computer to put his favorite album on loop until he's been asleep for half an hour. And Renette, who's watching this, cries. Some things to note in this one is that Donatello is completely blind, and it's speculated that perhaps this is what Shadow did to Donatello. Finally, it has been long believed that this was Donnie's death, that after going to bed, he never woke up again. As for where his brothers are, perhaps they never reconciled and are still estranged, or perhaps Donnie is the last one alive. We will never know. At least Mikey is still around enough to be old in the holograms, while the younger Raphael gives the implication that maybe him giving the April robot was the last time they ever saw each other. But this is the last we know about the future in the Mirage comics. Well, except for the Futroid having an adventure with Gizmo at some point, but honestly, this future is a lot more bitter than sweet. As such, let's switch over to a happier future, like the one seen in a 1987 show in the episode Once Upon a Time Machine. In this episode, Shredder jumps ahead to the year 2036, planning to conquer a future where the Turtles are too old to stop him. But the Turtles follow him, of course. As such, we find out what has happened since 1991, the year this episode takes place. New York now has flying cars, crime is gone, and it's so peaceful that the police don't even carry weapons. This is all because
the Turtles put all the criminals behind bars and defeated the evil Shredder. They started a Clean Up the City campaign.
And as a result, they became extremely popular and wealthy. There are statues of them in the city, and Mikey owns a pizza chain called Michelangelo's Cowabunga Pizza. The Turtles have since retired and now they live in a turtle mansion, but they haven't kept up with their training. And as a result, Mikey gained weight from eating so much pizza, Donatello has bad eyes due to always reading in the dark, Raphael has bad legs due to not keeping up his exercise, and Leonardo now has a bad memory. And he didn't even do anything wrong. I guess this was just inevitable. Also, April is still a reporter, by the way. Anyways, the old age Mutant Ninja Turtles try to stop the Shredder that came to the future and fail, but are saved by the past Turtles who they team up with. Afterwards, the past Turtles decide to take their training seriously to remain sharp in the future. And Mikey even says he's gonna give up pizza for a while. Yeah, I doubt that. Sticking with TV shows, the 2012 show shows us that at some point in the near future, the Earth will be hit with a mutagen bomb. A large portion of humanity will be instantly destroyed, and the portion that survives will be mutated. Now the Earth is a wasteland in the middle of a mutant apocalypse. As for the Turtles, during the blast, Leonardo pushed his brothers out of the way. This saved Raphael's life, but during the blast he got amnesia. Although throughout the 3-part special, his memory will slowly return. Donnie, however, was in the middle of working on Metalhead 2.0 when the blast killed him. But taking a page out of the Fugitoids book, he succeeded in transferring his consciousness into Metalhead, becoming Donbot. Mikey and Leo, however, have gone missing and are nowhere to be found. As for the plot, we find Raph and Donnie years later, and they're being attacked by a biker gang led by Verminator Rex. Keep an eye out for Verminator, he is someone who shows up in a lot of these futures. Anyways, the Turtles eventually meet Mira, a mutant meerkat with a map tattooed on her, to a place called Oasis. Oasis is a mythical place that is untouched by the mutant bomb and has water in abundance. This is critical because the world is a desert. It hasn't rained in years, and most of the water that is around is irradiated. Mira tells them that there's a mystic who can read the map, which is also very clearly a subway map. I don't know how they did put it together, but this mystic is a mutant turtle who goes by the name the Holy Chalupa, and this makes the Turtles realize that the mystic is Mikey. So after fighting their way through the wasteland and the quicksand pits, they find a giant monster turtle, which is revealed to be Chompy, the alien turtle Raph got as a pet, all grown up. And then they find Mikey, living in a pizzeria with rotten pizza and cartoons. Ice Cream Kitty's also there, by the way. Mikey, however, has gone a little insane from the isolation, but when they ask him about the map, he reveals that he was the one who created it. This also creates the implication that Mikey left the Oasis to go live in this pizzeria, and at one point, he found a mutant meerkat tribe and gave them a map to the Oasis that they couldn't read. Okay, well, shortly after this, Verminator Rex, who has teamed up with the Scaletail gang, kidnaps Raph and Mira, and Raph is made to fight against the leader of both gangs in a gladiator pit. But he ultimately wins and is thus crowned the leader of both gangs. The gangs, now worshipping Red Stripe, aka Raph, heads off in search of Oasis. But Verminator Rex wants revenge, and he goes to find the Lord of the Wasteland, one who has wiped entire communities off the map, and tells him of how Raphael has the map to Oasis. Now the Turtles and their gang have to fight this guy, Maximus Kong, who is a behemoth of a mutant riding around on his huge Mad Max-like vehicle thing, right? And the Turtle gang is getting killed off one by one. The tides start turning, however, when Mira just straight up kills Verminator, and then Raphael faces off one-on-one against Maximus Kong. And he's getting smacked around, I ain't gonna lie, but with some help, he finally manages to knock Kong's helmet off, revealing that Maximus Kong is Leo, who's mutated a second time by the mutagen bomb, and has gone insane. I mean, like, really insane. This guy is he's killed hundreds. Anyway, Raph and the Turtles, however, after pinning him under some rubble, manage to reach out to him, and he regains his sanity. So for the first time since the explosion, he remembers who he is. With Leo back on their side, all the brothers have been finally reunited. And with the map in hand and no more enemies in their way, the brothers, along with Mira, find Oasis. And here, they make a new home for themselves. If you're wondering what happened to the rest of the cast, we see Timothy's case in the bottom of the lake at the gladiator pits, meaning Mutagen Man probably died there. Also, the Turtles have Karai's motorcycle, with the implication being that she died. The Turtles also have April's fan, which is now broken, as a decoration, and Donatello is straight up wearing April's butt sticker, so she's dead. And Casey Jones is definitely dead, as they straight up use his skull as a bomb at one point. Whether or not this is the canon future for the 2012 show has been up for some discussion, but the creators have, on numerous occasions, stated this is the canon future. I'd also like to mention that in the 40th anniversary comic, Krang Prime returns, having undergone a secondary mutation to become Krang Primordius. And at the end of the comic, he escapes. So, all I'm saying is, Krang Primordius has the means and motivation to launch a mutagen bomb. So, currently, I'm putting my money on him being the one responsible for the mutant apocalypse. Speaking of mutant apocalypses, we get to the future described in the After the Bomb RPG guide, where it's detailed that in the near future, cheap gene-modifying technology is so widespread that literally anyone can create mutant animals at home. In this future, disease has been completely eradicated, so some kids, as a prank, try to build a virus based on the human genome just to see if they could. But this virus ended up working a little too well and wiped out 3/4 of humanity. The remaining governments mistook this for bioterrorism and waged nuclear war. This fall of human civilization became known as the Crash, sending us straight into a mutant apocalypse. By the year 2112, mutant animals are everywhere. Humans are few, with most residing in the Empire of Humanity. But due to interbreeding and genetic tweaking, about 70% of them are secretly mutants themselves. The other main thing here is the Roadhogs. You've probably heard this name thrown around a bit in a bunch of TMNT media. You see, Roadhogs was the follow-up supplemental RPG guide to After the Bomb, named after the titular Roadhog gang. This is a biker gang that rules a portion of Route 99, and it's estimated that about 1/4 of them are mutant pigs. You get it, hogs are bikes, 1/4 of them are pigs, which are also hogs, you get it. Anyways, in the Roadhogs RPG guide, we also find out what happened to one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In a comic written by Kevin Eastman, we find members of the Roadhogs threatening some mutant turtles, but not the ones we are accustomed to. These mutant turtles reveal that they were trained to be ninjas by their sensei, but his great age has been showing lately. This sensei is revealed to be Raphael, who has gone almost completely senile and believes just about everyone he sees is Mikey. The turtles then prepare for the Roadhogs' impending assault, and when the Roadhogs finally pull up, they're caught unawares and step into booby trap after booby trap, before finally confronting the turtles. But when the Roadhogs start to get the upper hand, Sensei Raph steps in and easily dispatches the Roadhogs, before telling his students to clean this mess up for him. Okay, Mikey. But the story of this world doesn't end there. No, this future is presented as having 8 twists in it, with After the Bomb being only the first. To go over them quickly, Twist 2 is Mutagen World in 2238, where mutation spirals out of control with each and every living thing mutating from one generation to the next. This forced most people to abandon Earth, with the Empire of Humanity colonizing Mars, a humanity-free zone being established on the Moon, and most of the world governments settling on Mars, where mutants and humans live in harmony. Twist 3's Machine Civilization in 2368, where robot factories now dominate the barren Earth. These robots were designed to wipe out mutations, but with basically everything having been mutated in some form, they now just seek to wipe out all life. But since there's nothing left to destroy at this point, the robots have turned on each other. Twist 4 is Endless War in 2488. Here, the planet has become a battlefield where warring machines, bionic mutants, robots with organic components, and other incomprehensible things are killing each other. And this war is so intense, they're just straight up dropping nukes as sensor cover. With twists 5 through 7, we have early and late Hamidian evolution, as well as false Eden. In these times, we see the Earth slowly recover. There are also no animals, but 6 races of humans, and they slowly evolve to become more animal-like. We also see them warn against a 7th nocturnal race of humans that evolved from night walkers to night stalkers to night hunters, with False Eden being called that because it is actually the most dangerous point in all of time, with the night hunters using their teeth and claws to kill at night, and using their intelligence to deal with weapons. We then get to the 3rd millennial barrier in June 10th, 1986. This is the last year available to time travelers. Time travel past this point will just send you to a random point in time, and if you keep trying to get past the barrier, you'll eventually just get a message that says buzz off. The final point in the timeline is Twist 8, Time Warriors, in 3088. Although not accessible through the barrier, there are rumors among Time Lords that there's a war going on between people who use time as a weapon. Perhaps this is where Lord Simultaneous went after he got promoted in the next mutation. Switching lanes entirely, we arrive at the Archie comics, in which the future is shown in 2 major story arcs, the Future Shark Trilogy and Return to Dreamland. But before that, I should mention Oyuki becomes a reporter by 1999, and there's also a 3-issue arc about Ninjara, aka Raph's ex-girlfriend, in the future, where we find Ninjara with her daughter Moko in a post-apocalyptic city, and she's acting as a hired burglar because she needs the money in order to track down her husband's killer and get revenge. And honestly, that's about it, because this story ends on a cliffhanger that will likely never be resolved due to a rights issue. Honestly, this was a weird direction to take Ninjara in the first place, as this comic is literally filled with blood, swearing, and nudity, as well as being published in a furry magazine. It's weird, man. Anyways, as for the 2 major arcs that take place in the future and were actually published in the Archie comics, we first have the Future Shark Trilogy. The only backstory you need here is in one issue a shark monster named Armagon fought the mighty mutanimals, claimed to be from the future, and kidnapped Merdude. Also, Shredder at one point tried to steal the Black Stone of Mecha, yeah, that Black Stone of Mecha, saying he would gain immortality when he combined it with the White Stone. In this adventure, it was revealed he was working with a cyborg named Terminator X. I told you he would show up again. And the villains escaped. Although, the good guys did manage to swap out the Black Stone of Mecha with a fake. Anyways, the Future Shark trilogy starts off right where these issues left off, and it's revealed that Armagon, Verminator X, and Shredder are all working together in a time travel plot to get immortality. And that while they failed to get the Black Stone, they did manage to locate the White Stone, leading the future version of Donatello and Raphael to go back in time to get help from the past Turtles and Splinter. And they get some backstory on everything that's been going on. Long story short, in the future, Splinter died of old age. R.I.P. got too soon. Also, the Earth is flooded because of climate change.
Again?
The flooding caused millions of rats to overrun the building, but Donatello, who now has a company called Turtle Co., team up with a young mutant cat named Manx to design robots to get rid of the rats. But the robots worked so well that they eventually were confronted by the Rat King. And after a battle that lasted for days, the Rat King retreated. This rat contract, however, made Turtle Co. a lot of money, which is why Turtle Co. is so successful nowadays. However, Manx wanted more, and began experimenting with biomechanical integration, experimenting on himself, even putting circuits in his brain. Like the way Elon wants to do. He did this because he was seeking immortality, but the process changed him, and he began calling himself Verminator X. He became bad. Laws didn't matter, lives didn't matter, all that mattered was his quest for immortality. With Manx gone, Donnie started working on a time machine that he called the Time Slip, by the way. But it was inefficient, so he began creating a second one, when Armagon showed up and stole the first one. Later, Armagon showed up and messed with the second one. The Turtles ended up fighting Armagon and were about to win when Shredder and Verminator just straight up jumped them and gave the opportunity for Armagon to hit them with a torpedo. In the end, Mikey and Leo were gone. Raph was missing an eye.
Again?
And they stole the second time slip generator. And now, Leo and Mikey are being held hostage along with Murdude. It seems Armagon used the first time machine to go back to steal the Eye of Sarnath from Shredder to use as a power supply, and brought Shredder back with him. But then their time machine blew up, so they stole the second time machine to continue their plan. Anyways, Donatello created a third time machine and contacted the past Turtles. Also, Future Raph tells past Raph to lighten up and not to let his friends slip away, to not let Ninjara slip away, to not lose sight of what's really important like he did. Meanwhile, back with Armagon, he is modifying the time slip device to give it more power, since with the limited power it currently has, it can only make about 2 or 3 more jumps, and he's modifying it by enriching the time slip machine with nuclear fuel, the bones of the Roswell alien, Healer's brain, and the White Stone of Mecha. Okay! Anyway, the Turtles attack, and Armagon ends up tackling Leo into a portal. But then Raphael, Future Donnie, and Future Raph chase after him, only for the machine to blow up behind them, stranding them in a weird swamp area with these weird fairy people that referred to the place as Thanacia. Although this was bound to happen, Future Raph, a swamp, it's inevitable. Meanwhile, back with Shredder and Verminator, the rest of the gang are fighting while the other Donnie fixes the machine, when an army of rats attack, because as it turns out, the villain had teamed up with the Rat King, who wants revenge. The villains have the upper hand at this point when Murdude, who's been here the whole time, I'm sure you forgot about that, I sure did, taunts Verminator and tricks him into shooting the wall, which causes water to come rushing in, flooding the base. Back with the others, the fight with Armagon continues when Raph accidentally kicks him over a waterfall. I mean, we've all been there. With the villains defeated, the heroes use the time slip machine to all reunite before saying their goodbyes. Future Raph tells Ninjara, who's also been here the whole time, that one I just did not mention, that Raph will mess things up in the future and that they will never see each other again, but he tells her to please give him another chance. Unfortunately, this will come to pass as Ninjara and Raph will break up as she will eventually leave him for another man. The same man who was murdered because she's hunting down his killer in the future in that furry magazine, if you remember. Anyway, Splinter then asks the future Turtles why they brought them from the past since future Raph and Donnie were completely capable of handling the situation themselves. But they say it was because they missed them. And then they say goodbye. Verminator, however, escapes, and the epilogue reveals that Armagon survived, but is trapped in Thanacia, which isn't another dimension as they thought, but actually the Turtle Co. building even further into the future where everything is truly flooded and weird. future Raph and Donnie would next show up in Megadeth, where the mighty Mutantos are all killed in a drive-by. And then the future Turtles help defeat Maligna to avenge them. This arc also introduces Nabucco, whose future is Leonardo's student, who's revealed to be April's great-granddaughter. If you're wondering who the grandfather is, they eventually introduce Casey Jones. Next, we get to the Dreamland arc, which kicks off with Verminator noticing a ship arriving on Earth. We then go to catch up with the Turtles. First, we find Raphael with his wife Mazcal, another dog mutant, I guess he has a type, and together they run a bar called Turtle Island. Meanwhile, Donatello is working on fixing his time slip device since, the entire last arc happened, when Hitler's brain causes it to show Nazi Germany. Anyways, we catch up with future Leo, who's a sensei to some students including Nabucco, a woman named Carmen, a man named Miles, and a mandrill mutant named Bob. These will all be important in the future. In the future? Anyway, future Mikey is a famous artist who uses his money to run an orphanage called Gabriel's Orphanage, which is owned by Turtle Co. As for the plot, Leo's calling Don because him and his students confronted some robbers, but they preferred to kill themselves rather than talk. Long story short, the Turtles end up fighting zombie cyborgs being controlled by Verminator, who then gets directly involved and almost kills Mikey, before escaping in a spaceship. Meanwhile, Hitler's brain, which is somehow relevant in this story, opens the portal to Nazi Germany on its own. Now, with Mikey recovering, the others head out, and we find out that a meteor is going to impact with Earth and destroy it. And an alien named Cranius has come for profit. You see, some aliens don't dream, but there is a procedure in which they can dream by tapping into the memories of others. So Cranius is collecting brains to sell before the Earth goes boom. Meanwhile, Hitler's brain, which has since modified itself with robot arms and legs, goes back to the past and starts killing people. The future Turtles then go back to World War II to stop Hitler's brain, and during the confrontation, Hitler's brain's containment shell is shattered by a bomb. The past Hitler is distressed by this, but then Raphael takes a cue from Captain America and punches Hitler in the face. The Turtles then try to go back to their time, but Hitler pulls a gun on them, thinking that they are demons. So Leo gaslights Hitler, saying, "No, this is hell." And when Hitler asks if they've come for his soul, Leo says, "We already own your soul, fool. We've come here for your brain." And not wanting the demons to take his brain, Leo successfully gaslights Hitler into killing himself. Awesome! High 3! But right as the Turtles return from the past with Hitler's brain, they are jumped by Verminator and Cranius, as the two villains have already beaten Leo's students, and now they take Hitler's brain and escape. But while the villains are preparing to leave the Earth, the heroes gear up to stop the villains. Raph, Mikey, and their allies end up fighting zombies, while Don and Leo end up being attacked by the brains that the villains have collected. Raph uses Donnie's electric bow staff on full power to fry the zombies, while also overloading the bow staff and shooting the wall, accidentally draining the brain vat as well as freeing Leo and Don. And when the two villains show up, Cranius is tired of the heroes and goes to collect their brains, but Verminator turns on him, saying they had an understanding: no brains from living beings. This leads Cranius to abandon Verminator, leaving him to die when the asteroid hits. Verminator alone now gets into a standoff with Raph. Verminator thinks Raph is bluffing and dares him to do it. And then Raph shoots him in the face, saying he never bluffs when it comes to life and death. The others get mad that Raph shot him, but Raph says he did what had to be done. The world isn't like when Master Splinter was alive. It's a much harsher world now, saying Verminator could have killed them all. If not today, then tomorrow. But this ends it. This saves innocent lives. Besides, Raph will live with it, not them. At least until the asteroid hits. But in a twist of fate, the ending reveals Verminator didn't die. Donnie managed to save him, and in the process, Manx was turned good again. And together, Donnie and Manx destroy the asteroid. Not gonna lie, the Manx redemption was really just tacked on here. Our next future comes to us courtesy of Rise of the TMNT, and this future is quite grim. You see, the Krang have launched an invasion of Earth. Humanity lives in caves eating leaves and rats while the Resistance fights on. Hypno and Warren Stone are part of this resistance, but they are killed. April, who at one point donned her iconic yellow jumpsuit that every version of April is legally obliged to wear at some point, becomes a commander, but is too killed. Raphael is also killed, and Donatello, who is apparently the smartest person on Earth, replaces Raphael with a robot duplicate of him. But then Donnie also dies, and Leonardo, who is the greatest ninja in history apparently, loses an arm, and then uses the robot Raph's arm as a prosthetic. He then trains Casey Jones, who is the son of their friend Cassandra Jones, and at this point, we get to the start of the movie. The war is raging, and we can even see Todd on the front lines. You see, this is the final stand of the Resistance against the Krang, and they have failed, leading Leo to tell Mikey, who's become the greatest mystic on Earth, to create a portal back in time to the day the Krang first invaded. Mikey says he can do this, but it will cost everything, and Mikey then sacrifices his life and makes the portal. Leo then tells Casey to go get the key and stop this from ever happening, and that when this is all over, to go grab a slice, and it throws him into the portal. The last thing Casey sees is Leo returning to the fight, only to get immediately vaporized by the Krang. And that's the future. Luckily, the events of this movie kick in which the Turtles and Casey successfully stop the Krang invasion, meaning this future will never occur. As for the real future, we find the Turtles and Casey, who's kinda stuck with them now, as they fight Armagon, who's a shark villain from the future. Stop me if you've heard this before. Raph is also missing an eye, by the way. Stop me if you've heard this before. But after the fight, Leo is depressed because he never got a chance to say goodbye to Splinter when he died, as his portal powers went screwy and sent him bouncing across the universe, missing months of time. But Mikey, who's been training his time travel powers with Renette, opts to send Leo back in time so he can say goodbye. They encountered a younger Leo who is fighting Repo Mantis, and future Leo stops him from using the portal, so he won't be sent across the universe. And future Leo tells him that Splinter has been sick, it doesn't have much time left, and that there was going to be an accident with the portal he was about to make, and he wouldn't have had the chance to say goodbye. We then cut to Splinter surrounded by everyone as he tells them he had a good long life, and that they were the best part of it. The Hamato spirit lives on in all of them, and he can now move on in peace, before thanking them for their love and patience with him, and notes how he ended up being an okay dad in the end, and says farewell. And then, he dies. Except, he doesn't, because he comes back and says, "By the way, you have another brother and sister," something that shocks the Turtles. And then he dies, for real this time. With Splinter now gone, future Leo says goodbye to them all, thanks them for giving him closure, and then says, "See ya in a few years." Also, as for the brother and sister thing, this is partially resolved as Big Mama's guard was actually their sister. And during the scene where they're moving through time, we see a scene of the Turtles meeting her. As for where the other brother is, who knows? That's a story arc that was planned but never came to be due to the show never getting a third season. Also, for any Rise fans who are upset about Splinter dying, he does that fairly often. You're gonna have to get used to it. But with the story of them gaining siblings out of the way, let's head over to the most famous story of the Turtles losing their siblings, The Last Ronin. You see, The Last Ronin continues a lot from the themes of City at War, in which the Turtles come to understand that they're stuck in an endless cycle of revenge, and that they're going to die trying to avenge someone they never even met. Obviously, in City at War, the Turtles teamed up with Karai to ultimately end the conflict and earn their freedom. But in The Last Ronin, things are more complicated because in this timeline, Karai is Oroku Saki's daughter. And we find out that the peace treaty between the Turtles and Karai is broken as they launched a surprise attack on Splinter. Raphael, thinking Splinter is dead, launches a one-man assault on the Foot, killing dozens of Foot ninjas on his own before coming face to face with Karai. The brutal fight ends up in the water where Raphael stabs Karai in the back at the same time that she stabs him in the throat. In the end, Karai is left comatose, and Raph is left dead. The war between the Foot and the Turtles would rage on for 10 more years, when Oroku Hiroto, the son of Karai, invites Splinter to Hokkaido for a peace treaty. Splinter and Donnie leave for this, but it's revealed that this was a trap meant to split their forces, as Baxter Stockman with an army of robots and Foot ninjas attacked the Turtles' headquarters, killing all their allies, before leaving Leonardo and Casey Jones to face down an army of Mousers all on their own, ultimately dying in the attack. Stockman, while here, tries to capture the Fugitoid, but the Fugitoid self-destructs to stop Stockman. In the end, Mikey, believing all his friends are dead, flies off to Japan to try to save Donnie and Splinter. But in Japan, Splinter and Donnie show up for the peace talks and find out that this too was a trap, as Hiroto sends his army to attack. Splinter, Donnie, and the Hamato clan fight their way through, but when archers show up, they are told to retreat. Splinter, however, refuses to retreat and charges in, leading Donnie to pull through and save him from a volley of arrows at the cost of his own life. Even still, Splinter continues forward, trying to avenge his family's honor, and throws his sword directly into Hiroto's shoulder, before Splinter is also shot down by arrows. Hiroto was badly wounded by this, but survived and escaped, and Michelangelo arrived too late and discovered that his whole family is dead. Completely lost, now a ninja with no master, a Ronin, Michelangelo wanders up into the mountains, intending to commit suicide by freezing to death. But remembering Splinter's words, he eventually comes to meditate there and spends 3 years trying to find peace. But one day, some people find him and, thinking he's a freak, try to beat him to death. And this makes Mikey realize that he can't run from his problems, and that this is not his destiny. So he kills all his attackers and leaves, before finding the local village being ravaged by the accomplices of the men who attacked him. So he kills them and finds out that they are part of an army led by a man named Deathworm. After being told he can't fight them alone, Mikey begins seeing his brothers, delusions in his head who talk to him constantly. Mikey then goes to train to prepare for the fight against Hiroto, deciding to train with the same sensei who taught Splinter. On the boat there, however, he is attacked by Deathworm's men. After dispatching them, he goes and completes his training, and the sensei tells him that he cannot confront one enemy if he's running away from another. Basically, before he can confront Hiroto, he has to deal with Deathworm. As such, Mikey goes looking for information and ends up in Korea. 3 years have passed since he's left the mountain by this point, by the way, and he confronts Deathworm's men and finds out Deathworm is in Mongolia. On the way to Mongolia, he drives through China, which has been devastated in an earthquake and is completely irradiated due to the earthquake messing up their nuclear power plants. And driving through this radiation causes Mikey to go blind. He's then found and taken to a village where he's taught by an old blind man on how to see without seeing. And Mikey becomes one of them, with a little girl named Geralt taking care of Mikey. He spends months there until Mikey feels he has found a new family. But then Deathworm attacks and kills everyone. During this attack, Mikey is shot in the neck with tranquilizers, which causes him to regain his sight, only to see Geralt dying in front of him. Mikey then gets captured by Deathworm's men and taken to fight in a prison camp, where they put bombs in the prisoners' necks and each night force them to fight to the death against one of the other prisoners. There are 2 camps here, one for mutants and one for humans, and by talking through the gate, Mikey makes a friend with a human prisoner. In the end, time passes until Mikey has killed all the mutant prisoners, and Mikey's friend has killed all the human prisoners, and so they are made to fight each other. Mikey's friend Shaka decides Mikey has more reason to get revenge against Deathworm, and instead attacks the guards, knowing they will kill him in turn, causing Mikey to win by default. After winning the tournament, Mikey is set free, and he asks where Deathworm is. And finally, after all these years, Mikey goes and confronts Deathworm, and kills him. With this done, there's only one enemy left, Hiroto, and Mikey makes the way to New York, now a walled-off city. The walls are to protect from the toxic water turned that way due to environmental pollution.
Again?
And discovers Hiroto and the Foot Clan ruled the city with an iron fist. Hiroto, for the record, is a psychopath with a god complex and mommy issues, and wears liquid metal shredder armor. He also has all of his tech supplied to him by Baxter Stockman. Michelangelo fights his way through the city and up to Hiroto's tower, but during a confrontation with the Mousers, he is tackled out of the window of the skyscraper. Barely alive, he escapes into the sewers and, thinking he's going to die, prepares to commit seppuku to die on his own terms. But before he can, he passes out and is found by a teenage girl, who takes him to April. Michelangelo waking up is shocked to find out April is still alive, revealing she survived the explosion all those years back, but lost an arm and a leg, and soon found out that she was pregnant too. She then reveals her daughter, Casey Marie Jones, aka the girl who found Michelangelo. Casey Marie reveals that they are part of the resistance fighting back against Hiroto. Casey asks about Mikey's book and reveals it is Splinter's journal that he used to complete his training. But on the last page, the words "no peace" were written by Mikey to remind him that there will be no peace until he completes his destiny. Meanwhile, Hiroto, not satisfied without Mikey's corpse, declares the city is now under martial law, and all hell breaks loose. Meanwhile, April feels she has the remains of the Fugitoid and can bring him back online. By the way, while here, April takes some vials of Mikey's blood. This will be important later. She then tells Mikey she has a plan to beat Hiroto. Basically, they take out Baxter Stockman's headquarters first and then attack Hiroto. In the meantime, Mikey begins training Casey Marie and becomes her sensei. He then confronts April, saying that Casey Marie is a mutant. And April reveals Casey was born a mutant due to her and Casey's exposure to mutagen over the years, and that Casey Marie has increased strength, speed, and healing. Eventually, the assault on Baxter Stockman begins, where they put the Fugitoid head into Baxter Stockman's system to overload everything. Stockman confronts the Fugitoid, but is too late as the Fugitoid destroys himself to kill Stockman and shut down all of his machines. On the eve of the final assault, the Turtles are talking to Mikey, but he is tired of listening to them day in and day out and tells them to leave and never return. Thus, for the first time in years, Mikey no longer sees his brothers. And the final battle begins. The Resistance is dealing with a flood caused by the blackout, while Mikey goes and confronts Hiroto. After fighting his way up to him, Mikey tells him that he will end the Oroku bloodline, and that includes Karai, who he has in stasis. But Hiroto reveals that his mother abandoned him when he was young, and he hates her, and only kept her alive so she can see him prosper while she suffers. And then he kills Karai himself. With this, the final battle starts. The building erupts in flames as the battle heads outside. The fight is long and bloody, as Mikey uses all of his weapons to destroy Hiroto's armor, turning this into a straight fist fight. Hiroto refuses to go down easy and makes his armor overload. In the explosion, Hiroto finally dies. Mikey, however, is now also dying, and Casey Marie finds him saying she brought the journal and that Mikey promised to train her, so he can't die. Mikey says it was his duty, his destiny for his family, but he will teach her. All she needs is in that journal, including the most important lesson of all, before changing the final words from no peace to no peace. And so, April and Casey Marie mourn Mikey, as Mikey rejoins his friends and family in the afterlife. The epilogue reveals Casey Marie kept up with her training, and April uses Mikey's DNA to mutate 4 new Ninja Turtles, taking us straight into the events of Last Ronin 2, Re-Evolution, which picks up 16 years later. It was Casey Marie as the sensei of the 4 new turtles, 2 of which are boys named Odin and Uno, and 2 are girls named Yi and Moja. During this series, their mutations start evolving, partially because of puberty, partially because the mutagen was created from Mikey's DNA, and Mikey was exposed to excess radiation in China. As a result, Uno has the ability to make his skin dark, like a reverse Michael Jackson. Odin can harden his skin, Yi has electricity powers, and Moja has telepathy. I feel like Uno got the short end of the stick here. Also, I should mention the Fugitoid was able to be recovered and is online, and at one point, he builds himself a body. Finally, Casey Marie is dating a police lieutenant named Jiro. As for the plot here, a corrupt businessman named the Chevalier is controlling City Hall and trying to take over the city by getting rid of the only ones who stay in his way, aka the Resistance. His plan is to stage a gang war between the Chelsea Cartel and the Midtown Mafia in order to draw the Resistance out, and then sends the Purple Dragons led by Mr. Jigsaw as well as the Crusader Knights who work for him directly to finish off the Resistance. As such, the Resistance bases, including their home in the sewers, is attacked. April floods the bases, and the Resistance escapes into a secret base they built on Roosevelt Island. The Resistance finds out that something sus is occurring within the Old Foot Tower, which is Chevalier's base, and they go to investigate, leading to the Resistance figuring out that Chevalier is behind this, but that he's also working with someone. At this point, the Knights and the Dragons attack the new Resistance base. But while this is happening, Chevalier's secret backers launch Operation Phoenix, and an army of Foot Clan ninjas starts killing gang leaders, the mayor, and the police chief. Meanwhile, Casey Marie is overwhelmed by an army of foot ninjas, and is about to die before being saved by Master Motsugai of Clan Hamato, who kinda just comes out of nowhere if I'm being honest, and Clan Hamato turns the tide of the battle. Meanwhile, April is confronted by Mr. Jigsaw, who starts choking her out, so she rips out his eye and starts beating him up, leading to Mr. Jigsaw to pull out a gun and shoot April, before promptly getting disintegrated by the Fugitoid. But the damage was done, and April dies in Casey Marie's arms. The final scene reveals that while the Resistance protected their base, the Foot Clan was able to take back control of New York City and Japan, and that the leader of the Foot Clan is Jiro's twin brother, and that Jiro is secretly a member of the Foot Clan. That's all we know about this future, however, as this story will be continued in The Last Ronin 3, which has not been released yet. Moving on, we get to the two futures shown in the 2003 show. First off, in the episode Same As It Never Was, Donatello is sent into the future. Here he finds a future that continued without him after he disappeared, since he was sent into the future. And it turns out that without his level-headedness, the team fell apart. This led to a world where Shredder has taken over. The portion of humanity still alive is in labor camps, building a transmat device so Shredder can take to the stars and continue his conquest. Donatello, in this world ruled by Shredder, finds Michelangelo, who is missing an arm, and Mikey tells him how Splinter sacrificed himself to save the turtles. He also reveals that Leo and Splinter are not on good terms. More on that later. Mikey takes him to the Resistance being led by April. I'm sensing a trend here, and he finds out that Casey has been killed by Shredder's forces. He also finds Hun and Baxter Stockman. Hun is in a wheelchair and Baxter Stockman has been fused to his shoulder. I swear, the body horror with this guy never ends. Apparently, this was the result of another one of Shredder's punishments. These two are with the Resistance after Resistance saved them from being executed. Now, Donnie has a plan to fight Shredder, but he will need Leo and Raph, so they lure the two together, and here we find Leo, who's dressed like something out of the Matrix and has a bunch of scars on his head like a Beaky or something. And we also find Raph, who's missing an eye. Something that is extremely common in these futures, by the way. Honestly, it's more rare for him not to be missing an eye. And these two are on site for real, because after seeing each other, they were about to start scrapping. And it seems that their conflict stems back to the day Splinter sacrificed himself, where Raph thinks they should have stayed to try to save Splinter, while Leo says that he was hopeless and that he wanted them to escape. Donnie shows up and puts an end to their fighting. With the brothers finally reunited, the final confrontation begins. At Shredder's lair, the transmat device has finally been completed. So if they fail to stop Shredder here, it's over for the galaxy. And we find Karai is still here working for the Shredder, along with her Karai Legion, aka robot duplicates of Karai. And Shredder now has newer, stronger armor. So the Turtles drill into the base and start their assault. Hun and Stockman stowed away, and Hun begins begging for Shredder to take them back. Shredder refuses and kills him and Stockman. Mikey begins fighting, but he's overwhelmed by the Karai Legion and is also killed. Leonardo then starts fighting Karai and wins, but before he can finish her off, a robot Karai sneaks behind him. Leonardo sees this and destroys the robot, but with his back turned, the real Karai cuts him down. Raphael sees this and goes into a frenzy and attacks Karai, only for her to kill him too. Damn, Karai killed him here too. If I had a nickel... Anyways, April comes through and hits Karai with a weird bazooka thing and kills her. Finally, Donnie's in a mech made from Karai Legion parts and begins fighting the Shredder, with the Shredder having the upper hand, before Donnie reveals that the Shredder getting in close was all part of the plan, as the mech begins wrapping chains around the Shredder and dragging him into the drill they used to arrive here in the first place. And upon hitting him with the Giga Drill Breaker, they finally kill the Shredder. With the fight over, April and Donnie are the only survivors. But Donnie starts being sent back into the past. April tells him that there's always hope, and then says thank you as Donnie disappears. Very tragic fates for our characters. Luckily, this future is immediately erased by Donnie returning to the past, which leads to the real future of the 2003 show. We have a lot of information about this future, as Fast Forward is an entire season that takes place here. But the only really important things are this. 50 years into the future, Bishop was experimenting on aliens with the help of Baxter Stockman, and creating monstrosities such as organic mousers. One day there was an accident and the facility was collapsing, but one of the alien prisoners saved Bishop. This made him realize that perhaps he was wrong about aliens, and with a changed worldview, he decides to protect Earth from aliens by allying with them instead, and creates the Pan-Galactic Alliance. Basically the UN but with aliens. And Bishop was elected the President of Earth. 100 years into the future, we get the year 2105, aka the year where Fast Forward takes place. There are robots and aliens everywhere, and we find a boy named Cody Jones, who's the great-grandchild of Casey and April. After having read about the Turtles in Casey and April's journal, Cody built a time window to see them, but this accidentally brought the Turtles to the future. We find out Cody is a genius rich kid who's being sheltered and raised by his robot butler Serling. Because Cody is the owner of O'Neill Tech, the company founded by Casey, April, and Donatello. By the way, Donatello also invented an element named Donatellium. Straight up out here inventing elements, like he's Tony Stark or something. Anyways, after Cody's parents died, he became the owner of the company. But since he is too young, in the meantime, it is being run by his uncle Darius Dunn, who is evil and secretly using the company to sell weapons. With the Turtles in the future, they train Cody, who now fights crime in a mech called the Turtle X, and together they face a bunch of criminals, and even stop Shachinoko, the evil shapeshifter of legend. There's also an episode that reveals Baxter Stockman is alive, because he grafted alien DNA to himself, and now he wants revenge. But Bishop, who's now a changed man, offers to clone him a body and make him the head of architecture. Something that Stockman accepts. In the end, the Turtles and Cody expose Darius Dunn's criminal activities, and the Turtles eventually go back to the past. Honestly, Donatello is the only successful Turtle in this timeline. Like, we genuinely know nothing about the rest. Finally, we turn our attention to the IDW comics, and here we are presented with 4 radically different futures. First off, in Turtles in Time number 4, we see a world where the Foot controls the Americas, Stockman controls Australia, and Krang holds the rest. The Turtles, upon arriving from the past in Shredder's Island, aka Manhattan, meet up with an older, jaded version of Donatello, who gave up on resistance, and because of that, he is the only turtle left alive. The Turtles in the story managed to rescue the resistance leaders who were going to be executed by inspiring some civilians to rise up. This makes future Donnie begin to believe that they can actually beat impossible odds. In the end, the resistant leader is revealed to be Woody the pizza guy, and he convinces the old version of Donatello to come back and join the fight. Next, TMNT 2020 takes place 20 years in the future. Go figure. Here, the Utrom Civil War is over, but the wrong side won. Europe is in ruins, and the Utroms are being fought by the Freedom Fighters, led by General Sally Pride. As for the TMNT, Leo started to withdraw into himself and explore his mystic side. He always took the weight of the world onto his shoulders, and after a while it kinda began to crush him, so they had Leo step down. And now, Mikey's the leader. Which is very interesting. We always knew that Mikey was the turtle with the most potential, and we're finally seeing a timeline where Mikey lives up to that potential. As for the plot, the turtles launch an attack against the Krang and manage to destroy the Technodrome. But the Krang reveals that was only one of multiple Technodromes, and then they destroy the entirety of Europe. Damn. Okay. After this absolute destruction, the turtles regroup, and the forces of Earth are mobilizing. The Pride Fighters, the New Earth Protection Force, the Triceraton Army, Harold's Robo Battalion, and more. And now they continue to fight the war that has been raging for 20 years. The third appearance of the future comes when we meet an older Raphael who's missing an eye. You know, he had to get one in there. He's time traveling trying to save everyone when a weird shark bites off his arm and he falls out of the time stream. The present day turtles end up finding him and give him a prosthetic. Future Raph then explains that Donnie will create something called a Genesis machine that will be the end of everything. He tries to solve the great problem at the end of time, but he tries so hard that it annihilates everything. Donnie then says he won't build the machine, therefore changing the future. The last we see of this future Raphael is him going off on his own before getting jumped by ninjas and presumably dying. Now, Donnie not building a machine does change the future, but the problem at the end of time, aka the giant shark eating the time stream, is a problem that will be addressed in the final arc in the future. And this final future is introduced to us in an arc that follows the mutant turtle Lita, who's been staying with the turtles. In the future, Lita's all grown up and is an apprentice to Renette. This grown-up Lita steals a time scepter and travels to the past, saying she's from the year 2040, and that she warns that unless Janika makes peace with Karai, the Splinter Clan will collapse. In her timeline, New York City is Mutant City, and the Splinter and Foot Clan go to war over it. The dojo is destroyed and all the turtles drift apart. Eventually, Janika kills Karai and becomes a crime boss. Raphael becomes a mercenary ninja for hire, Donnie a war cyborg who never finishes the novel he was working on. Michelangelo is disgusted with all of this and leaves Mutant City. He becomes a famous journalist after he does a story exposing all the secrets of the Splinter Clan and mutant life. He then severs ties with everyone. Leo vanishes, and Alopex trains Zinc, Mushroom, Santa, and Pepperoni to be deadly assassins, and she and Raphael are mortal enemies. Oh, and as the cherry on top, all their friends die. After this, Lita was left all alone until she was found by Renette. The only other details we get here is that apparently Leo and Koya are together. You know, a classic enemies to lovers story. Leonardo also trains two people named Bob and Carmen. You know, gotta have some Archie comics representation in here since IDW loves taking aspects of all prior continuities. And finally, Pepperoni gets mutated. By listening to Lita's advice, this future was avoided. When Lita takes Toka and Razar to go live in the new future, we see everyone living in a nuclear wasteland. In this scene, we see just about everyone in the future, including notably Carmen, Bob, Miles, and Nabucco. I wonder if Nabucco is April's kid, since she's still too young to be her grandkid. This would also mean that Casey and April got back together, which they weren't the last time I checked. Finally, there are a couple new characters here, Doro, Jinx, and Artemisia, who's a character from a fan comic Sophie Campbell wrote that she managed to canonize here. And I want you to keep in mind that this scene is the new future in the year 2040. But all in all, besides the fact that they're in a weird wasteland, this future seems pretty good. For now at least. The next time we see this future, things are a lot worse. This takes place when Venus and Donatello travel to prehistoric times and are almost eaten by a megalodon. So they travel to the end of the universe, but this begins transforming the shark into the monstrosity known as Armagon. Armagon is in pain and rages at being created, so he's eating his way backwards through time to prevent his own existence by undoing the turtles from ever being created. If you couldn't tell, this was the giant shark that ate Raphael's arm, and this is the problem at the end of time. Next, we find out that the future version of Bob is working with Armagon, as Armagon has promised to help turn him back into a regular person. And this version of Bob travels back in time to make Donatello fail and make sure Armagon wins. As a result, Venus and Donatello begin a time-jumping time travel adventure to stop Armagon. Donatello first goes to the future, where he sees himself drawing his family with the warp crystal, saying he's taking one last look before his memory is wiped of it all, saying that they never believed him about Armagon until it was too late, and that he tried while they did nothing, and they left him, so goodbye. It seems that he's erasing his memories of his brothers because he's bitter. Meanwhile, however, Venus sees her future self alongside Bludgeon, training students in the mystic arts as part of the Aura clan. Future Donatello shows up, but unfortunately, Armagon arrives as well and kills everyone. Next, Donnie and Venus meet up with the future version of Leo, who looks exactly like her Mirage comic self, even has the blue sword and everything. They then ask him what happened to the village they saw in 2040, but Leo says it's been a long time since then. The Splinter clan drifted apart over years, but a few of them stuck it out. Raph and Umiko had a falling out, and no one has seen him or Pepperoni since. Umiko is crazy, by the way, because that is the other name for Ninjara, Raph's girlfriend from the Archie comics. There they date for a long time, but it ultimately doesn't work out. Seems it was the same way here, but Raph appears to have taken this much harder. He then says Janika and Sheena went off to live by themselves and start a family, while Mikey just went into the wastelands one day and no one has heard from him since. They used to communicate through their Gofu, but it's been quiet for a long time. We also find out that this Leo is with Koya and a sensei to both Bob and Carmen. Also, Wanda's here, but I don't know if she's a student or just hanging out. Leo then explains that Donatello became a full-fledged sorcerer. He created his own children and then left, withdrawing himself from everyone. Eventually, Leo takes them to Venus's Aura camp, right at the point when Armagon was eating everyone and eats him too. Time travel, am I right? After this, Donnie and Venus encounter Renette, Lita, and Raphael. Lita is a full-fledged timestress now, and Raph is senile, the side effect of messing with time without safeguards. He's suffering from temporal psychosis and advanced temporal atrophy. He thinks a hockey mask is Casey, and he thinks most women are Umiko. Also, there's no cure. The Time Lords are just letting him coalesce here, as he likes to tag along on their missions, but at least he seems happy. Donnie also wonders if this is the future Raph he saw before, and like, no, this Raph has 2 arms and 2 eyes, obviously not. Although, that Raph did encounter what appears to be Armagon, so maybe they're similar, but they are different. Also, Lita implies Donnie and Venus were together in the future, something that is not bound to end well since we saw them die. We also get our obligatory cameo from Verminator X, and even Cranius shows up. They are featured in the Time Prison. There's also a third person here, but I can't make them out, unfortunately. Anyways, Armagon shows up and kills everyone, which is becoming a little bit of a trend. Next stop, Mutant City. Here they meet a future version of Janika, who's a cyborg. She's also a private investigator. Apparently she did that for a few years, but quit and recently got back into it. Seems he was searching for Mikey for years and couldn't find him. He isolated himself back when the big celebrity thing got too much for him, and that's actually why Janika quit. She thought she wasn't a good private investigator if she can't even find her own brother, which, like, she's not wrong. She then reveals that everyone got mad at Donnie because of his magic, so he created his own kids using the warp crystal and left to go study Armagon. Anyways, they leave and end up at another point in time with Mikey and Clunk. Mikey explains he got famous, then lived in LA, then Japan, while everyone else did their own thing. He explains he got all messed up because of radiant gravity. For those uninformed, radiant gravity is a form of psychic gravity, and one of the things it does is pull people closer to you. So Mikey was scared whether or not he was famous because people really like him, or if it was just the radiant gravity pulling them in and making them like him. But Mikey was like, no, this is good. It'll let me reach people and help them. And for a while, everyone loved him. But the more famous he got, the more people wanted something from him. And now, he doesn't know who's the real deal and who's a leech. So he just avoids everyone and just holes up in his place with his pet cat, Clunk, wishing he would just disappear so no one would ever get sucked into his orbit ever again. Anyways, Donnie and them leave, and they next bump into Donnie's kids, Roy, Max, and Pris. But they explain their dad treated them like playthings. And Venus says that their auras are nearly identical, but that's because future Donnie used his Q&A to give them life. They say Donnie is a neglectful parent who often vanishes. He was alone, had driven away his family and tried to make replacements. Eventually, he created them, but they weren't what he wanted. So now he just resents them, because like all art, they are just a harsh reflection of the artist who made them. So when he looks at them, he just sees everything he hates about himself. At this point, future Donnie shows up and scolds young Donnie for making a mess of things, while young Donnie is scolding future Donnie about how he treats the kids. Future Donnie, however, says they're not kids, they're just drawings, and this leads to a scuffle where his kids, who can make weapons out of his bodies by the way, try to stop future Donnie from hurting anyone ever again. But this pisses off future Donnie, who then kills Roy in return. Past Donnie stops him from wreaking more carnage and asks for his help fighting Armagon, but future Donnie says it's hopeless, and then gives him his talisman and leaves. Long story short, in the end, they beat future Bob and Armagon, and Donnie goes back in time. And it should be said that this future will never come to pass most likely, as Lita is demutated and Venus literally dies, so. And with that, we have officially covered every future shown to us in TMNT. And having seen so many, you definitely start to pick up on the patterns here. After a certain point, you can almost make a bingo sheet based on what will happen. Personally, Raph losing an eye and someone dying is almost a given. Also, something interesting I want to mention here is that turtles typically live hundreds of years, and yet the turtles here are presented as having relatively normal lifespans. An easy example of this is in the 2003 show, where the turtles are long gone by 2105, and that's only 100 years in the future. In most iterations, they do seem to still be long-lived, as Mirage Leo died in 2099, and he was 15 in 1985, meaning he died at 129 years old, which is extremely long, but only slightly older than the oldest human ever recorded, who was 122 by the way. And then there are the Archie comics turtles, who live to be at least 400 years old, if Raph is to be believed. So I ask you, how long do you think the turtles can live for? I'm interested in seeing your answers. But for now, that's all I got for you today, folks. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.